Imagine two wise masters, separated by thousands of miles and centuries of time, quietly watching the same river. One stands in ancient Athens, his brow furrowed, contemplating the nature of virtue and self-mastery as waves crash against the rocks below. The other rests in a bamboo grove in ancient China, smiling as he watches the current flow effortlessly around the stones. One says, "We must train the mind to be indifferent to what we cannot control." The other whispers, "The wise man adapts to the flow." On the surface, Stoicism and Taoism seem like opposites. One praises discipline and rational control, the other encourages surrender and flow. But beneath the differences lies a surprising harmony, a timeless conversation between East and West about how to live with peace, strength, and clarity in a chaotic world. In a time when anxiety rules headlines and distraction compete for every second of our attention, people are turning back to ancient wisdom for answers, and for good reason. While the modern world shouts, "Do more, be more, chase more," the ancient masters offer something radically different: serenity, purpose, freedom. This video is not a dry comparison of doctrines, it's a living guide to transforming your life. We will place the core teachings of Stoicism and Taoism side by side, not to pick a winner, but to see what they reveal about the human experience when viewed through both lenses. You'll discover how Marcus Aurelius and Lao Tzu, Seneca and Zhuangzi, although worlds apart, were grappling with the same truths: how to endure pain, how to embrace joy, how to let go of what weighs us down. We begin with the mind's most common enemy, anger. To the Stoics, anger is a destructive fire that must be contained. Epictetus reminds us that it's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things. When someone insults you, you can either react blindly or pause, examine the insult, and choose not to be disturbed. For the Stoic, reason is the blade that cuts through emotional chaos. Anger is a failure to reason, but the Taoist doesn't fight the fire, he lets it burn out on its own. He sees anger as a ripple in the water, temporary, not to be clung to or resisted. Lao Tzu advises, mastering others is strength, mastering yourself is true power. Taoism teaches that anger arises when we resist what is, when we wish the world to be other than it is. Instead of wrestling with the moment, the Taoist breathes through it, allowing the feeling to pass like a cloud in the sky. So which is better, mastery or surrender? The truth is, they are both paths to the same summit. The Stoic says, control your inner response, while the Taoist says, release your inner resistance. One trains the will like a sword, the other softens the heart like water. And both paths, if followed with sincerity, lead to the same outcome: peace. Next, let's explore attachment, the root of suffering according to many traditions. The Stoics were masters of detachment. They spoke of the preferred indifferent, things like wealth, health, and status, which are nice to have but not necessary for a good life. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." When we cling to outcomes or possessions, we become hostages to fate. The Stoic response is premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, a daily mental rehearsal of loss to build inner fortitude. Imagine losing what you love, not to become cold, but to appreciate it deeply without fear. Taoism offers a different metaphor. Instead of training the mind to let go, Taoism teaches us to never cling in the first place. Like water, the Tao flows around obstacles, never grasping, never forcing. Zhuangzi tells a parable of a man who forgets his self while drifting downriver, laughing as he merges with the current. For the Taoist, attachment is unnatural. It creates turbulence in the flow of life. Joy comes not from holding on, but from letting go. Both teachings reject obsession. Stoicism does it through rational self-discipline. Taoism does it through effortless awareness. One carves away desire with a chisel, the other melts it like ice in the sun. Both are antidotes to the modern addiction to more achievement, more control, more identity. And both ask the same fundamental question: what are you without all the things you think you need? Let's now turn to the pursuit of happiness, a concept often misunderstood. The Stoics didn't chase pleasure, they sought eudaimonia, a kind of flourishing rooted in virtue. Happiness to them is not about feeling good, but about being good. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. For the Stoic, happiness is a byproduct of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, the four cardinal virtues. It is found in doing your duty, in living in harmony with reason and nature, not in chasing fleeting pleasures. Taoism redefines happiness as harmony, not a moral virtue, but a felt resonance with the Tao. When you are in alignment with the way of things, you feel joy without seeking it. The Taoist sage doesn't strive, he follows. He doesn't manipulate, he trusts. And in that surrender, he finds a quiet bliss that arises naturally. Zhuangzi describes this as free and easy wandering, a lightness of being, like a butterfly that doesn't ask where it's going. So while the Stoic builds happiness on a moral foundation, the Taoist uncovers it through non-resistance. One says, live according to virtue. The other whispers, live according to the flow. And maybe true happiness is not in choosing one or the other, but in knowing when to be the disciplined sculptor and when to be the dancing flame. What makes a person truly free? Is it the absence of obstacles or the ability to navigate life with grace despite them? This is where Stoicism and Taoism present two distinct but strangely harmonious paths. The Stoic asserts, you are disturbed not by things, but by your judgments about things. Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by courtly drama and the chaos of empire, didn't seek control of others. He sought mastery over his own perceptions. Similarly, the Taoist would say, the Tao does not contend, yet it always wins. Lao Tzu walked away from society not to escape the world, but to align with a deeper rhythm, one that flows beneath appearances, beneath the noise, beneath even desire itself. In comparing these philosophies, one might assume that Stoicism is harder, more disciplined, more rigid, and Taoism more fluid, more natural, perhaps even passive. But that would be an oversimplification. The truth is, both aim to liberate the mind from suffering. Both urge us to stop clinging to control. Both suggest that peace is not something you acquire. It's something you uncover by letting go of the illusions that cloud your vision. Let's take the subject of anger, for example. The Stoics treat anger as a failure of reason, a loss of clarity that arises when we mistake someone else's action as a personal attack on our inner peace. Epictetus taught that no one can truly harm you unless you give them the power to disturb your tranquility. The Taoist response is more subtle, more like water meeting stone. Anger is resistance to what is, and resistance, the Taoist would say, blocks the flow of energy. The wise one responds not with argument, but with stillness, like a lake reflecting the moon, untouched by the winds above. Now, let's look at success and ambition. In modern life, ambition is often glorified. Grind culture, hustle mentality, bigger, better, faster. Stoicism does not reject ambition outright, but it questions the motive. Are you chasing goals because they're aligned with your nature, your duty, your virtue? Or are you chasing approval, fame, or material validation? Seneca warns us, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. The Taoist goes even further, suggesting that ambition itself may be a trick of the ego. The more you chase after something, says the Tao, the more it eludes you. True power in Taoism arises when you no longer seek it. You simply become it, effortlessly. In relationships, Stoicism urges us to be responsible for our side of the emotional equation. We are to love without dependency, give without expectation, and be present without needing control. This may sound emotionally cold to some, but it's actually a profound call for emotional maturity. To love others while remaining anchored in your own virtue, that is Stoic love. Taoism, on the other hand, views relationships as energies in balance. Harmony arises not by effort, but by attunement. Don't force understanding, listen. Don't chase connection, become open. In both philosophies, the message is clear. Cling less, love more purely, and cultivate your own center first. Now imagine standing at a crossroads between these two ancient paths. One leads to the discipline of the mind, the other leads to the surrender of control. But what if the true path lies not in choosing one, but in weaving them together? In the real world, we face constant triggers. A toxic work environment, family pressure, social comparison, unexpected grief. A Stoic will meet this storm with preparedness. They've rehearsed misfortune in their mind. They've learned to expect discomfort and to convert it into strength. The Taoist, however, will not resist the storm. They will sway like bamboo, letting the wind pass through them. They will wait until the moment of stillness returns. Both are right, and both combined offer something incredibly powerful: resilience with softness, courage without rigidity. This union becomes most powerful in our darkest hours. When anxiety grips you at 2 a.m., when you're staring at the ceiling wondering what's the point, the Stoic reminds you, focus on what you can control: your breath, your thoughts, your response. And the Taoist whispers, stop fighting the current, be with it. Trust that the river has its own intelligence. We live in a world of noise, news cycles, algorithmic feeds, endless opinions. And through this noise, both philosophies point us inward. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Lao Tzu would agree, but add that thinking too much is the very thing that distances you from being. There is a wisdom that cannot be spoken, only felt. A peace that cannot be explained, only lived. So what do we do with all of this? First, we start with awareness. When you feel triggered, don't immediately react. Ask, is this within my control? That's the Stoic move. Then ask, can I release my resistance and flow with what is? That's the Taoist move. You begin to play both notes in harmony, like yin and yang circling each other in the dance of human experience. Second, build daily rituals. Journal as the Stoics did. Reflect on your day, your choices, your values. And meditate like the Taoists. Sit quietly, breathe, become empty. Do both. Let one practice inform the other. Discipline your thoughts, but release your expectations. Third, find your teachers, not just in books or videos, but in nature, in stillness, in your own body. The tree that bends but doesn't break. The breath that calms a racing heart. The silence that holds your pain without needing to fix it. This is where East meets West, not in theory, but in experience. And finally, remember, you are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are not your suffering. You are the awareness that observes all of it. You are the still point in the chaos. You are the strength of Marcus and the flow of Lao Tzu. You are the bridge. So the next time life tests you, pause, feel the tension. Then choose. Choose to stand tall like a Stoic and bend like the Tao. Let your power be quiet but undeniable. Let your path be humble but unshakable. Let your mind be trained but free. This is the art of modern mastery, not dominance, not control, but inner alignment. A mind like a mountain, a heart like water, and a spirit that walks through fire and rain untouched. Yet even with all this wisdom, one could still ask, which path is better? The Stoic's path of hardened resolve, or the Taoist's dance with the flow? That question itself, ironically, reveals the Western mind's hunger for clear winners, hierarchies, and categories. But the beauty of this exploration is that neither philosophy demands exclusivity. In fact, their union offers not conflict, but harmony, a yin and yang of mental clarity. One offers the sword of reason, the other the water of adaptability. One teaches you to endure the storm with a firm spine. The other teaches you to bend like the bamboo and let the storm pass through. What we learn, ultimately, is that wisdom doesn't come from clinging to a single philosophy, but from embodying the balance of their truths. You don't have to be either the mountain or the river. You can be both. Let's now explore what these traditions say about attachment, the invisible chains that bind so many of us to pain. The Stoics would tell you that attachment to outcomes is a recipe for suffering. Happiness, said Epictetus, begins with a clear understanding of one principle. Some things are within our control, and some things are not. The Stoic detaches from expectations not to become cold, but to stay free. He loves deeply, but he's not destroyed if things don't go his way. He works with excellence, but is not owned by the reward. On the other hand, Taoism teaches a gentler version of this freedom. The Taoist lets go, not through resistance, but through acceptance. When I let go of what I am, Lao Tzu said, I become what I might be. The Taoist doesn't detach by force of will, but by returning to nature, realizing that everything is impermanent, and clinging only invites suffering. Both teachings converge here. Real peace is not found in control, but in surrender. It's not passive resignation, but an active letting go, like opening your hand to release a bird, rather than clenching so tightly you harm it. Now, consider how these philosophies deal with the pursuit of happiness. In the modern world, happiness has become a commodity, an Instagram lifestyle, a checklist of possessions and achievements. The Stoics shatter that illusion. They teach that happiness, or more precisely eudaimonia, comes not from pleasure, but from virtue. For a Stoic, a good life is a disciplined life, one guided by reason, justice, courage, and self-control. If you live virtuously, you're already happy, regardless of external chaos. Taoism, again, offers a more fluid interpretation. Happiness is not chaste. It arises naturally when we live in alignment with the Tao. It is like the reflection on still water. Disturb the surface with desire or resistance, and the reflection disappears. Happiness is a byproduct, not a goal. The Taoist isn't trying to be happy, he's simply being, and in that being, joy arises. The modern person, bombarded by consumerism and productivity, can learn from this. Slow down, simplify, be present, and you might just realize you were never missing anything. What about anger, that fire that so often consumes us? The Stoics believed anger is never justified. Seneca wrote entire treatises on its dangers, calling it brief insanity. To the Stoic, anger is a loss of control, a surrender to emotion over reason. When someone insults you, the Stoic doesn't strike back. He pauses, observes his reaction, and responds with dignity. He remembers that the actions of others are outside his control, but his response is his own. The Taoist too warns against anger, but from a different direction. To the Taoist, anger is a sign you've moved out of harmony. It's a ripple in the still pond of your inner self. You don't fight anger. You observe it, breathe through it, let it pass like a storm over the mountains. In both systems, anger is not strength, calm is. In both systems, the one who controls his emotions is not weak, but powerful beyond measure. Now let's take a modern lens and place these ideas into real-world application. Let's say you lose your job unexpectedly. The Stoic response would be to first accept the reality, it has happened, and you cannot change that fact. Then you ask, what can I control now? Your reaction, your next step, your mindset. You turn the loss into a chance for growth. You might even see it as a test, a way to live out your values under pressure. The Taoist might respond differently. They'd encourage you to step back and listen, not to act immediately, but to feel the energy of the moment. Maybe this is the universe redirecting your path. Maybe this is not a fall but a flow. Instead of pushing, they pause and feel the current. And when they act, it's with precision and grace. Combining both gives you a powerful approach. Accept what is, remain still long enough to sense your direction, and then act with calm determination. In the realm of relationships too, we see their wisdom shine. Stoicism reminds us not to expect others to behave how we wish, but to love them as they are. We do not control their choices, only our love. Taoism, meanwhile, teaches the subtle art of yielding. It whispers, do not force love, do not chase, let it flow. Relationships, it says, are like water. Held too tightly, they slip through your fingers. Both teach that ego destroys connection and presence nurtures it. As we navigate the chaos of 2025, with global uncertainty, climate anxiety, digital overwhelm, and societal division, the teachings of both East and West offer refuge. The Stoic reminds you to be the calm center in the storm, to use reason as your shield, and to choose courage when fear calls. The Taoist reminds you to soften, to find stillness within the motion, to trust in the unfolding of life even when the path is hidden. And in your day-to-day life, when things feel too heavy, ask, am I resisting the moment or flowing with it? Am I being ruled by fear or guided by reason? Am I chasing happiness or simply being present enough to receive it? We often believe strength comes from control, but both philosophies teach a deeper truth. Strength comes from self-awareness. It's not about having power over others, but power over your own mind. It's not about forcing the world to bend to your will, but bending just enough to avoid breaking. When the world shouts, you remain quiet. When life speeds up, you slow down. When others chase status, you cultivate stillness. And perhaps the greatest lesson both systems teach is this: peace is not something you find, it is something you return to. Like a stone at the bottom of a river, it's always there, even if the surface churns. Whether through the discipline of Stoicism or the surrender of Taoism, your task is the same: to return to your nature. To walk through this life not as a slave to emotion or circumstance, but as one who is awake, aware, and anchored in something deeper than words. So the next time anger arises, pause. When fear whispers, listen but do not obey. When joy comes, do not cling. Be still, be soft, be strong. Be like the Stoic, grounded in truth. Be like the Taoist, flowing in grace. And in doing so, you just might become someone new. Not a master of others, but a master of yourself. And in mastering yourself, you begin to see the world differently. The noise that once stirred anxiety now becomes background music. The delays, the disappointments, the betrayals, all lose their sharp edge. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. The Stoic doesn't need perfect conditions to be content. He crafts contentment from within. The Taoist doesn't seek to fix the chaos of the world. He becomes the stillness within it. And you begin to embody both, the clarity of the sage and the steadiness of the warrior. This balance isn't reserved for monks or philosophers. It's available to anyone who dares to pause, to breathe, to observe without judgment, to act with intention rather than impulse. In traffic, when you're cut off, your body tightens. But the Stoic reminds you, is this worth your peace? The Taoist nudges, let it flow. Don't dam the river for a single leaf. When your partner says something hurtful, your ego flares. But the wisdom speaks. You do not have to attend every argument you're invited to. Strength is not reaction, it's restraint. And ironically, this restraint is not cold suppression. It is warm awareness. You see clearly, and so you choose clearly. Even in ambition, this union brings clarity. The modern world tells you to grind, hustle, chase. Success is measured in clicks, followers, dollars. But what is it to gain the world and lose your center? The Stoic would say, do your duty, but do not become your titles. The Taoist would say, do not strive so hard that you sever your roots. You can be ambitious and anchored. You can build without burnout, because your worth no longer comes from achievement, but from alignment. You're not chasing validation. You're expressing your nature. You're no longer building to impress. You're building to serve. That is a far deeper source of motivation, and a far more sustainable one. Let's not pretend this is easy. It isn't. But ease was never the goal. Depth was. Real growth often feels like undoing, like losing who you thought you were. The Stoics call this discipline. The Taoists call it unlearning. You begin to see that much of your pain came not from the world itself, but from your resistance to it, from your insistence that life should be different. And slowly, layer by layer, you shed those expectations. You no longer need the world to change. You simply become the one who can meet it, no matter how it arrives. This mindset transforms conflict too. You begin to see that most arguments are two egos wrestling for control. The Stoic, aware of his emotions, chooses his words with care. He asks, is what I'm about to say useful? Or am I just trying to be right? The Taoist, sensing energy, might simply remain silent, letting the tension dissolve like mist in morning light. Both paths teach that silence is not weakness, it is power. It is knowing when to speak and when to hold peace like a shield. And in grief, perhaps life's most crushing teacher, both philosophies offer comfort, not in denying the pain, but in holding it wisely. The Stoic reminds you, everything is borrowed, even the people we love. Do not say you have lost it, said Epictetus, but that you have returned it. The Taoist whispers, death is not the end, it is transformation. Like the leaves falling in autumn, it is not loss, it is the cycle of change. You are allowed to weep, you are allowed to feel, but you are not required to shatter. You can grieve and still stand tall. You can hurt and still choose peace. And then there's the internal storm, the voice of doubt, of self-loathing, of fear. Both the Stoic and the Taoist know this voice. They do not fight it, they simply stop believing it. The Stoic counters it with reason. Is this thought true? Is it useful? The Taoist, with presence, is this thought even yours, or just passing clouds? They do not cling to every fear or story the mind creates. They breathe through it, like watching birds in the sky, appearing, flapping wildly, then gone. So how do you begin to walk this path? You begin by noticing. By waking up, every moment offers a choice: react or respond, resist or flow, attach or release, and you will not always choose well. That's okay. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to practice. And in that practice, the mind slowly becomes quiet, the heart open, the body grounded. This is not a philosophy of escape. It is a philosophy of embodiment. You might begin each day with a simple pause, a breath, a question: what is mine to carry today? And when challenges arise, as they will, you return to that breath. You observe without rushing, you act without clinging. Over time, you become less like a leaf in the storm and more like the tree, bending but never breaking. Your meditation practice does not have to be perfect. Even 5 minutes of presence is powerful. Your journaling does not have to be poetic. A single sentence of clarity is enough. Your walk does not have to be far. A few slow steps with awareness can bring you back to yourself. These are not hacks or productivity tools. They are sacred practices. They are reminders that wisdom is not far, it is always within reach. And if you ever forget, just remember, water does not force its way. Fire does not apologize for its glow. The mountain does not chase clouds. The wind does not demand stillness. They are simply themselves. You too can return to this nature. You too can learn to trust the unfolding. You too can stop fighting the river and learn to float, awake, aware, alive. When you are faced with adversity, repeat this: this is not happening to me, it is happening for me. The Stoic sees adversity as training. The Taoist sees it as flow. You can see it as transformation. You can meet pain with presence. You can meet fear with stillness. You can meet uncertainty with a soft, curious heart. And in doing so, you become the bridge, not east or west, but whole. Not mind or body, but aligned. Not chaos or control, but calm. This is your power. The power to choose how you meet the world. The power to create stillness where others bring noise. The power to love without needing. To act without forcing. To live without fear. So when life calls, answer. Not with panic, but with presence. Not with a need to dominate, but a willingness to understand. Let this be your revolution. A quiet, grounded, unshakable revolution of inner mastery. You are not lost. You are becoming. You are not broken. You are breaking open. You are not weak. You are waking up. Keep going. You're almost home. And what does home truly mean in this context? It's not a place on a map, but a state of being. A calm center that isn't disturbed by the shifting winds of fortune. A grounded sense of who you are, even as the roles you play, worker, friend, parent, creator, rise and fall like waves on the ocean. You begin to see that home is not somewhere you find. It is something you remember. It's that quiet awareness beneath all the noise, that steady light that doesn't flicker no matter how dark the world becomes. This sense of home allows you to navigate life without grasping. The Stoics teach that suffering comes not from events themselves, but from our attachments and expectations around them. The Taoists go a step further. They encourage surrender, not as defeat, but as a dance with reality. You begin to live less from desire and more from presence, less from need and more from alignment. This is not about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming emotionally sovereign. You feel deeply, but you're not ruled by those feelings. You experience anger, but you are not angry. You feel sadness, but you are not consumed. You allow emotions to pass through like weather, real, powerful, but not permanent. And in this emotional sovereignty, something incredible happens. Your compassion deepens. When you're no longer drowning in your own storm, you're better equipped to help others through theirs. When someone lashes out, you no longer take it personally. You see the fear beneath their words, the confusion behind their cruelty, and instead of striking back, you hold steady. Not because you're weak, but because you understand the deeper game. You've outgrown the need to win every battle. You're playing for something greater: peace, clarity, truth. This way of living is subversive. It's powerful in its quietness. Because the world often rewards loud confidence and outward displays of strength. But inner strength, that's invisible until it's tested. And when it is, those who've built it, those who've sat in silence with themselves, who've observed their thoughts without judgment, who've responded to pain with patience, they don't collapse. They rise, slowly, steadily, like mountains beneath the fog. This journey, of course, has no final destination. There's no medal, no grand moment of arrival. Because the path of wisdom is circular, not linear. You revisit lessons, you forget, then remember, you fall, then rise. And each time you rise a little stronger, a little softer, a little wiser. You begin to see the value of repetition, the discipline of showing up, the sacredness of doing the small things with great attention. A breath, a journal entry, a morning walk. These are your temple practices now, not because they are glamorous, but because they're grounding. Not because they change the world, but because they change you. You stop chasing perfection. You replace it with presence. And in doing so, you become more powerful than you ever were in pursuit. Because now your value isn't based on performance. It's based on being. You no longer need to prove your worth. You embody it. You no longer fear mistakes. You learn from them. You don't resist failure. You alchemize it. The Stoic would say, what stands in the way becomes the way. The Taoist would smile and say, the obstacle is part of the flow. And you, somewhere in between, begin to trust both. Even in relationships, this transformation echoes. You begin to release codependency and grasping. You stop needing others to complete you. Instead, you meet them from wholeness. You listen more than you speak. You hold space instead of filling silence. You let love be less about possession and more about presence. You give without losing yourself. You receive without guilt. And when things end, as all things eventually do, you let go without bitterness, because you've made peace with the truth. Nothing is truly yours, not people, not moments, not even your own body. Everything is passing through. You are the witness, the channel, the steward, not the owner. And this shifts your relationship with time. You're no longer rushing towards some future version of happiness. You're not stuck rehashing a past that cannot be changed. You drop into the now, not as a cliché, but as a lived truth. The Stoics taught to contemplate death not as morbid obsession, but as a reminder to live fully. Memento mori, remember that you must die. The Taoists teach that all things rise and fall in their season, so why cling? When you hold both views together, you begin to taste the sweetness of the present. A moment of laughter, a sip of tea, a quiet sky. These things become enough, more than enough. They become sacred. So what now? You keep practicing. You keep showing up. You walk forward not in pursuit, but in purpose. You become a presence in the world, steady, calm, clear. People may not always understand you. They may ask why you're not angry when everyone else is, why you're not rushing when everything feels urgent, why you're not afraid when the world is panicking. And you'll smile, not with arrogance, but with peace. Because you've discovered something rare, an inner world no chaos can touch. That is your sanctuary, your compass, your unshakable ground, and the more you live from it, the more you light the way for others, not by preaching, but by presence, not by instructing, but by embodying. You become a quiet invitation to those still drowning in noise, a reminder that another way is possible, that peace is not passive, that strength is not loud, that wisdom is not rare, just rarely practiced. But you're practicing, and that changes everything.